Hello, I'm Kimberly Underwood, Senior Editor at FCA International Signal Magazine. I'd like to welcome you to our executive interview series. Today I'm sitting down with Joel Bilheimer, a strategic account architect at Pexip, and Kevin Davis, who is a principal consultant at Advantage Engineering and IT Solutions. They're going to speak to us about zero trust architecture and how it's redefining data security and what that means in a real-time production environment. They'll explain the application of zero trust architecture to video conferencing and how this can assist in securing critical meetings in the government sector. We've heard a lot about zero trust, especially over the last year and a half, but I haven't heard about it applied in this way. So I'm looking forward to what Kevin and Joel have to say. In his role at Pexip, Joel supports government agencies in the areas of application security, secure system design, risk management, policy development, and framework compliance. Before joining Pexip, Joel was the cybersecurity architect for the Department of Defense's Global Video Services Program. He also ran a cybersecurity consultancy servicing FedRAMP, Risk Management Framework and Cybersecurity Framework, or RMF CSF, Common Criteria, the Department of Defense Information Network Approved Products List, or the DoDIN APL, and other accreditation models. He has 25 years of experience designing, implementing, and sustaining video and broadcast networks in a security-conscious environments such as the government military. And he also holds CISSP and CCSP certifications. Kevin is a member of the National Security Agency's Zero Trust team, where he's helped develop several zero trust-related artifacts, including the Defense Department's Zero Trust Reference Architecture, the DoD Zero Trust Strategy, an NSA cybersecurity information sheet, and related engineering items. He is a senior systems engineer with over 25 years experience supporting federal customers across diverse technology fields, including telemedicine, unified communications, and advanced high-performance computing and cybersecurity. And Joel, if you could start us off by talking a little bit about Pexip and its technology capabilities.
Sure. So Pexip is a software-based video conferencing tool that is designed for enterprise organizations. It is not a consumer product. So our primary markets are enterprise customers, high security customers, critical infrastructure, people like that. So I personally support the Department of Defense, Defense Information Systems Agency, Defense Health Agency, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and Environmental Protection Agency, NORAD. That's my market. And we one of our somewhat unique capabilities, in fact, our unique capability is that we can be deployed because we are completely application-based, because we're completely software-based. We can be deployed on-prem, we can be deployed in the cloud, we can be hosted on infrastructure that our company owns. We provide a software as a service application. We sort of bounce around to all these different ways of delivering you a video services product. And what we are trying to do is with concepts like zero trust and API-driven services, is we're trying to move beyond the normal traditional concept of video conferencing as a way that we all get together for 30 minutes to have a little chat and then we all go about our business. We're trying to enable organizations and users within those organizations to expand their mission by introducing video capabilities to products, services, capabilities, functions that maybe aren't traditionally considered video enabled. And that's something that we might talk a little bit more about today. So,
right, sure.
Glad to be here.
And Kevin, the concepts surrounding zero trust have been around for a decade, but why is it a hot topic now? And why should people care or pay attention?
I guess I'll switch the questions there. First off, at least in the government space, the reason people should pay attention is there's an executive order out for improving the cybersecurity of our nation, which specifically calls out zero trust as the architecture and cybersecurity model to move towards for the entire federal government. So you should pay attention. Secondly, another reason that it's a hot topic now is technologies have come to the point where things like cloud, software-defined networking, virtualization, software-defined data centers really lend themselves to policy-driven security, which is really what Zero Trust is. It's focusing on the data and enforcing policies that says who can and cannot engage with that data.
Right, sure. Joel, anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things about this notion of securing data as opposed to securing networks is that, data can be anywhere, right? I mean, data can be on a cell phone. It can be on a device that I'm wearing to amplify my audio to this call right now. It can be on a wearable. It can be, in any kind of enabled device, right? Whether that's home, whether that's at the office, whether that's off in the cloud, which is, of course, really just different data structures that are organized and transported in unique ways. So the focus on securing data now all of a sudden means that we have to start looking at applications and how applications secure data. It's no longer enough to say, well, this service, this capability, my ability to communicate with my vehicle from my vehicle manufacturer, that's something that is only unique to that vehicle. No, that lives out in the universe now. And so even within for example, a video session, we have the ability to say, well, what you and I are talking about right now, Kim, okay, that's public information. Obviously, we're distributing it publicly. But let's say, for sake of argument, that you and I decided to talk about my recent doctor appointment. Not that we're going to do that, but if we did, that would all of a sudden become a HIPAA conversation if you say we're a medical provider. Well, you and I control that. And so you and I, if we control how we distribute that information to each other in a room, or if we're out in the hall somewhere, we should have that same ability in a virtual space. So really what our organization and others are doing is trying to take this concept that we all know inherently as, yes, there are some things that I share in certain spaces, but not in others. We all do that natively. We're trying to introduce that to the application level. And so that's why we're working with Kevin and his group to come up with ways to implement those and generate use cases for customer bases like the DoD.
Right, sure. And Kevin, what are some misconceptions or myths about Zero Trust?
I think the biggest one we run into quite often is that Zero Trust is a set of technologies or technologies itself. It's really a cybersecurity strategy, as Joel said, or I said previously also, and that's data-centric. So we've switched from network-centric to data-centric. So, and we're also switching from the concept of perimeter, which Joel articulated very clearly, by the virtue of where data is today, that there really isn't a perimeter. So the idea of perimeter defense doesn't work. So Zero Trust speaks to that. But it's really an organizing principle. So rather than cobbling together or putting together various capabilities in sort of a mishmash manner, it's the idea that you, from the ground up, decide you're protecting your data. And then from that, what do I build intentionally and design intentionally to work together? Versus sometimes they come together by happenstance, or I know that I have an organization that does really good at desktop security, an organization does really good at analytics, but we haven't really worked hard at making those two work together. And so their choices may not actually complement each other, but if you go about thoughtfully with where industry is, you can do that much easier in a much more effective way.
Yeah, and I would say to add to that, we as a vendor, we didn't create Zero Trust. I would love to be able to say we did, but that's obviously not true. And we're not saying that we are going to implement Zero Trust for you as an organization. We can't do that. But what we can say is we understand that this is the method of securing data for the 21st century. Like, this is what needs to happen. And our products are aligned and our services are aligned to seamlessly integrate with whatever policies, whatever structures you're putting in place. We are completely API driven, for example. Well, as I'm sure Kevin can speak to, APIs and external policy engines are what drive Zero Trust. It's what governs the system. And Kev and I were actually having an interesting conversation the other day about what IoT, for example, can do, or what some of the interesting considerations that Zero Trust brings to an IoT environment, as opposed to maybe a data exfiltration example. And Kev, I know I'm leading you here, but I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit.
Oh, well, just I'm trying to remember the conversation. So the idea of how you would segment and how you would work those devices, because they're everywhere, and so it's not always an exfil. It can also be that it goes back to damaging my data, making sure I can't do anything with it. Yes, the integrity. So CIA. So the idea is that you can still, from an Internet of Things aspect, or from a operational technology, so HVAC systems and the whatnot, which are all connected now. How does Zero Trust let you connect those things, use the benefit of being IP enabled, and yet still make them not beachheads, which can then become, toeholds that become beachheads, as the director of NSA likes to say. We're trying to stop that. So we can keep the people from, one of Joel's examples is a fish tank. If someone can get into an IP enabled fish tank filter and then access a database, we want to try to avoid that. So Zero Trust provides a way to see how to organize yourself so that you can actually stop those things from happening.
And the important thing is the fish tank example is not hypothetical. That is an actual thing. A casino, we don't know which one, but about 3 years ago, a casino lost about $70 million because someone broke in through a thermosensor in their fish tank. That is a beautiful example of how not to do it, and how Zero Trust can prevent things like that, as any other I've been able to identify.
Right, sure. And when it comes to this specific application of video conferencing, how do Zero Trust principles apply there?
Right. So we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but the whole concept of any data exchange is that you, the individual, are the data owner of what you are transmitting. And obviously, it's a give and take. You are then become sort of a partial owner of what you receive, right? So again, this is something that humans understand inherently. An example that I give a lot is, let's say that someone knocks on my door, and I open the door, and it's my friend Kevin. Kevin, hi, great to see you. Come on in. Let's grab a beer. Okay, great. Second option, let's say that someone knocks on my door, and it's my neighbor from up the street. Oh, hi, Miss Richardson. How are you? Is everything okay? What's going on? Oh, we got our mail crossed up? Okay, great. Let's do that. But I'm not inviting Miss Richardson inside my home because, I just don't know her that well, right? We're perfectly friendly, but I've already created a conceptual difference between, the space that I am physically going to allow someone into and inherently the information that I'm willing to share with her. Let's say also that there's a knock on my door and it's 10 p.m. at night. No one should be knocking on my door at 10 p.m. at night. That is not, if I even go to the door, which I may choose not to do, I am not opening that door, right? I'm turning on a light. Okay, yeah, I don't know who you are. All of those are actions that humans do completely natively. So what we're trying to say is, okay, we should be able to do that virtually. When all of these communication tools that we all are completely embedded in now, given the last 18 months of everything, we should be able to apply the same basic communication inherent rules, again, that we all inherently understand, to the virtual space, to whatever tool that we're using. And that's, if it's just you and me one-on-one in a consumer product, yeah, okay, we can kind of control that. We don't know where our data is going, where it's being routed, and there's a certain risk associated with that. But we still have the ability to sort of monitor that. But if you think back to, for example, Zoom bombing, the fact that we even know what that term is, and that's not to pick on that product because we all suffered from it. But that notion of there's a PIN, and the PIN is a single global key that everyone has access to. Well, that's not a very good way to secure the type of information we're sharing. That's simply into a meeting room. Imagine a conference room down the hall, right? How do you prevent someone from, opening the door and yelling? Well, you lock the door. Okay, that's one level that we can do. But then let's say that we're having a virtual meeting with 100 people or 1,000 people or 2,000 people. We have customers that do that. And there is no way for me as the host, for us as a group of hosts, to be able to parse and understand exactly who all those people are, or maybe they're coming in from their own organizations. We don't know who's coming in on the backside of those organizations, anything like that. So what we're saying is, okay, there are ways actually to start to create metadata tags, to start to create data categories at the session level, so that we can say, okay, right now this is an unclassified administrative conversation for this part of the organization. Okay, boom, 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 boom. Only people who fit into that set of roles are allowed to access this session. There's no pins. There's no logins or anything like that. Well, there is a login, but it happens outside. It's an identity management thing. But once we've authenticated an individual or device, we say, okay, here's the stuff you're allowed to go see. Go do it. Do whatever you want. It's okay because you've been identified by these rules. Now let's say that our subject matter is going to change. And now we're going to talk about a classified downrange environment that is between, let's say, 4 different organizations. Maybe we're in a real world event, and those watching this will know exactly what I mean by those types of terms, right? Well, it shouldn't be incumbent on the user, those of us who are in a real world event, it shouldn't be incumbent on us to be able to say, okay, now I have to go. I go to a different system that's in a different building. Oh gosh, I don't remember the PIN for that. No. It's still you. You're still accessing the exact same way you just did to that unclassified call. But now, because your roles, you are also part of those roles, you can still go to the exact same space, still have the exact same people in your conversation, but now nobody else can get in. But also, if there were people in that unclassified conversation who don't qualify for any of those things, guess what? They're not allowed to have that conversation. And we can do that in real time because, frankly, the world is a real world place. The world is a real time place. So if we're having an unclassified conversation, Kevin, you and me right now, and we need to make it a classified conversation, boom, single button, single press somewhere. How you do that is up to you. And now, whereas before we might have been able to allow 200 other people into the conversation, maybe it's only 4 now. And we don't have to do anything differently. That all happens automatically via a set of triggers that could be manual, but they could also be automated. And it's those automated triggers, those automated sensors. That's where some of the work that Kevin's been doing up at the agency. That's where a lot of that starts to come into play. That concept of an AI-driven confidence engine. But I'll let him speak to that.
Oh, I'm going to speak to that. So no, I was just very good because Joel really articulated the idea of multiple attributes, and so whether it's classified or the time of day or the location or any number of attributes, it's that's driving, like he said, whether it's machine learning or AI and going through analytics to say, well, now that these tags are at the data. We know what the data, because now we know what the data is, and we know where it is, so we can treat it like an object. And because we can treat it like an object now, we can say, okay, we're going to automate how we determine who has privilege to see or engage the object. And so there's a lot of work going on, and that's one of the underlying aspects of zero trust. When you break it down into its 7 areas, 2 of them are analytics and automation, and that automation is key because that's what allows us to do these things on the fly and mitigate, reduce the blast radius of an event rather than finding out something horrible has happened. And it could be horrible, like $70 million from a casino, or horrible as, a kinetic event somewhere else in the world. And if we can reduce that in a moment, rather than having to go back forensically and try to figure out what happened, so maybe we can stop it from happening again. The idea is how can we stop it right now and reduce the amount of damage that is impacted on us. So that's part of that. Again, going about thinking about the system and thinking about how the interplay of capabilities work to create an effect. So
Kim, going back to the question of why is a video company involved in this? So one of the interesting ideas that's come out of some of this is, especially if you think about IoT and you think about automation, there are certain elements when you've got all this that you want, or in some cases need, to have a human interface, right? So right now, that is someone typically looking down at a console and a series of graphs and analytic data or something like that. But we can also start to say, okay, we can also actually increase our overall confidence in the data that we're getting, because keep in mind, you never trust everything completely. So even that data that's coming into you, there's a confidence score there. It's like, yeah, okay, I'm 80% sure maybe that this is probably accurate, or maybe I'm 60% sure because, I don't know, that system's acting weird. Well, now we can start to say, okay, maybe you, me, and Kevin are all independent experts, and we're all looking at independent data sources, and we're all looking at each other. And we're saying, hey, are we good? Are we good? Are we good? We're no longer relying on a chat tool or a checkbox in some database to say that, yes, we think this is operating correctly. Now we've actually, because now it's a real-time thing, now we know who we are, we know what our voices sound like. So now our confidence level is rising from maybe 60 to 75 to 80%. And what that allows us to do is to say, okay, that series of executable actions that the organization has predefined as what to do in a contingency or incident response type of situation, now we have, simply by the fact that we can see each other and we know who we are, in addition to those data sources that are coming in, from all over the place. Maybe now, and maybe it's not that much, maybe it's 60% to 65%, but we've raised our threshold. We've increased the potential set of actions that we are allowed to take organizationally. And all of that is happening in real time. So that's one of the cooler potential use cases that we've been talking about recently.
Right, sure. And what advice do you guys have for network administrators on what they can do now? Obviously, early we talked about kind of the DoD reference architecture that's been out there that was developed by the DoD CIO and DISA. And then, of course, NIST has its SP 800-207 document. But where can people get more guidance about taking these reference architectures for Zero Trust and then applying the ZT framework to their video conferencing?
Kev, I'm going to let you start with that one.
Well, we'll have to go back to you because the video conferencing, that's your bailiwick. But as you said, Kimberly, those references, there's also, you can go to zerotrust.cyber.gov, which lists CISA and OMB's latest maturity models and strategy. Also, there's, on the industry side, people like Google, Microsoft, there's even Netflix, Lisa, Adobe, Zen. You can search for those, and they all have documented what they've done, their journey in Zero Trust. And I think that's an important part to remember too. It's not something you do and then you're done. It's an ongoing evolution. It can improve as you go along, and it's not an easy thing. It's not something that you just throw money at equipment, install it, have the lights blinking, and say we're good to go. We checked the box. There's a lot of thinking that has to go into it, and there's a lot of back-end organizational structure that has to happen, that people have to possibly work. I hate to use like an Apple phrase, but work differently, think about things differently, communicate differently, which leads me back then to collaborating with video and things like that, which lets Joel talk about video.
Yeah, and to that point, this may seem like an odd marriage, but it's exactly for that reason. It's because we enable, simply by what our products do, we enable communication in somewhat non-traditional ways. Well, at least up until 18 months ago, they were somewhat non-traditional. But now, this is, and even 10 years from now, this is going to seem simple, right? This is going to seem, like, oh my gosh, yeah, we really did that, and whether that's the metaverse or fully augmented reality or whatever that ends up looking like, it's just going to build and build and build and build. So if we haven't built into the very, very basic level of our communication planning, and I don't just mean that in terms of, again, administrative function, but literally every single step of every single service, like how are we communicating that? How are we interacting with that? How are we securing that? If we haven't thought about that now, imagine when the metaverse becomes a reality, because to Kevin's first and I would say most, largest point, this is just a framework. This is just an approach. there's nothing that you can open that says, click these 4 buttons, activate that thing, and now you have zero trust. That's not how it works. It's about rethinking your entire relationship with your data and what you as an organization can and will do in order to secure it. So, from a video conferencing perspective, I would love to tell you, sure, Kim, you go to the management interface, you go to this tab, and you click the button, and now you're zero trust. Really, our products are built that way because we are so API driven. If it exists in our product, there's an API for it. And so it's all about being able to integrate with that larger policy construct that an organization is going to have. Now, I will say I have a few customers who are using essentially their video conferencing, their Pexip video conferencing infrastructure as a demo of how zero trust works, because it's just how our product works. And so they can say, hey, look, here's some stuff that we can do in video conferencing. Wouldn't it be kind of cool if we could do that with our databases? Wouldn't it be nice if we could do that with our HVAC sensor array? And so that's hopefully where some of the conversations that Kevin and I have had are coming from. Hey, yeah, we should probably figure out how to do that. So on that topic, if someone does see this and it is not yet December 6th, if that's 8th, then Kevin will be giving a presentation that he and I jointly created in Phoenix, Arizona at DOTIS. Definitely, if you see this and you're interested, please show up, and I guarantee you Kevin will answer all of your questions. Sorry, buddy. And then we also have some other materials which about how this integrates from a video conference specific or a UC specific element. But we'd love to talk to you more, and our contact information is attached. So.
Right, sure. Thanks, Joel. And Kevin, any other parting thoughts or advice?
No, I think Joel really summed it up. We'll be at DOTIS. If people want to stop by after, go to the talk, and then we can hang out and talk afterwards. I just want to say again, I just want to. My experience dealing with customers is, I keep going back to the technology aspect, that people think that they can just check boxes and turn things on, and that's not what it is. It is a thought process that has to occur. But it's effective. I mean, it is really effective. We've seen plenty of examples where things like SolarWinds, where people have had the actual malware, they identified it, and when they went back and checked things, because they were working in a zero trust environment, they didn't have the response the experiences that other people did. But it takes time and effort, and it's complex. But it's really, like Joel said, also, it's really goes back to how we own and manage our data, and that's really what's the important part, right? The important part is the data. It's not necessarily a device or a network, because the things that we're acting on, whether it's again acting in the real world or acting, to figure out a formula for my taxes or anything, it's all that data is important, and when I can use it effectively, that's good. But when someone can take that away from me, either take it away or mess it up, damage it so that I come up with the wrong answers, really, really bad things can happen.
Right, sure. Well, thank you both, Joel and Kevin, for walking us through these zero trust considerations and why it's important to secure video conferencing. For more information about Pexip, please visit www.pexip.com. I'd also like to point you to Pexip's white paper called Optimizing Your Zero Trust Environment for Secure Video Conferencing, and you can download that on their website.
Which Kevin and I jointly wrote. So,
very cool.
So.
Yes, from the experts, straight from the experts. So you can just search on your website, their website, and download it. And then don't forget to catch them if you are attending or can see the Defense Intelligence Agency's annual conference, DOTIS 2021, December 8th. Thank you both, and have a good day.
Thanks, Kevin.